So thanks for joining us at what has now excitingly become the Yeti Everyday Adventure Kitchen. We've got Harrison Ward here, aka the Fell Foodie, for anyone of his many followers. And you have taken to preparing delicious restaurant-style food in some pretty wild and wonderful places.
That's right, yeah. I just like to take my passion of food up into the fells in sort of this lovely area of the Lake District that I'm from. So fantastic.
So I have to say I've been looking forward to this session quite a lot, bit of a foodie myself. But we have got a pretty exciting recipe to kind of get underway. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you're going to prepare, and then we can find out a little bit more about you and your story.
Of course, yeah. So we've got a ratatouille we're going to cook up today. So some aubergines, courgettes and peppers. We're going to sort of pre-prepped a little bit, but we're going to cook that up on the camping equipment and serve it with some nice olive oil flatbreads for you to enjoy afterwards.
Oh, sounds awful, doesn't it? Great stuff. So, yeah, we're going to get to hear a lot about your story, but did you start off, are you kind of a trained chef? Is there any formal training that's gone into it, or how has it come about, this passion?
Not at all, no, I'm completely self-taught. It's just been one of my earliest passions, really. I think sort of it developed as a child, sort of cooking with my gran. I guess she was quite a big baker in sort of the parish, I guess quite religious, that sort of way, so lots of cakes, lots of things like that, and the family would all come round for Sunday dinners and whatnot, and I was always chipping in. I was quite close with her from sort of quite a young age, really, so I just loved the way it sort of brought everyone together. I think food around the table, it always seemed to be the focal point of things. I went from there, so I guess I just sort of started cooking with her and always just researching, I guess, on various TV shows and whatnot growing up. I was more likely to be watching Saturday Kitchen than I was watching cartoons and things. So,
oh, how wholesome!
And I guess just reading cookbooks and whatnot, a bit more of a scholar, that sort of way. So I've not been taught at all. Just picked up little things here and there from peers and family. And
oh, brilliant! And then you had a little bit of time, kind of in the hospitality industry as well, where I suppose kind of almost tips and tricks get learned through osmosis, do they?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I worked from quite a young age in back of house in kitchens and whatnot. Just washing pots originally, just that sort of way, going all the way up to front of house, all the way up until as recently as sort of 25 years old, really. So it was about 11 years in the trade in the end, so all through kitchens, all through that front of house bar to actual hotel management in the end. So
wow.
Again, working alongside a lot of different chefs, always asking little bits there, little tips, watching, just taking things in, and some little spells there myself as well when the occasional absences occurred. So
just filling in nicely.
Yeah, just we jump in, we tried it, but a very different style to the home cooking style is the professional kitchens.
And the kind of the fiery nature of chefs, is that something you kind of adopted?
I like to think I'm quite a laid-back character, to be fair. I think in that scenario, though, it is a very high-pressure scenario, and even I felt when that ticker's going off with the meals flying through, and you keep telling front of house to stop them putting through, you do find yourself almost the aneurysms coming on, I think, to the sounds. But I much prefer the sort of serenity, I think, of cooking in the outdoors.
Absolutely. So I feel terrible that I can't help prepare anything, but obviously the times are what the times are.
Of course.
Also, I don't want to stuff it up.
No problem.
So I'm going to kind of let you get underway while I kind of quiz you about some other bits and pieces.
Yeah, no problem. We can get going now. So yeah, we'll get the flatbread started then, shall we?
I think this was the critical bit, wasn't it, to get these on? I reckon about 20 to 25 minutes maybe to prepare this whole meal?
So. Yeah, that should be okay. I think we'll get this finished off. So I said I'd usually prepare things all on the mountaintop, really. From scratch. I like to sort of take the time to really take in the views up there and whatnot, and again, if you're out with a bit of company as well, people also tend to gather around. I think if you're wild camping or even just up on a hike, everyone sort of gets together.
That kind of Mediterranean vibe in a way, where it's
I guess
like
so,
the whole evening is taken up.
With the Cumbrian weather, yeah, it's a bit of a different feel. But.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, I mean, I'm sure you're not scared of a bit of rain and a bit of wind, but it must get to the point where preparing something of this magnitude is nigh on impossible with your parsley blowing away and your stove going out.
I've lost my garnish once or twice, that's for sure. But it's no, I mean, obviously from this area originally, I'm from Carlisle originally, sort of just north of the Lake District, so very used to the rain and sort of these conditions we get. So I'm blessed to be born with a waterproof skin, so it's one of those. But it can be challenging at times, yeah. I mean, certainly. I mean, I do find wind tends to be the hardest to contend with. Obviously, things blowing away. It can be hard with stoves, keeping them lit, especially gas stoves. I do use some other stoves as well, little wood burners, or even sort of petroleum-fueled stoves, so they can be slightly better. But when you are sort of in the exposed tops and whatnot, then the conditions can be difficult to contend with. So, but the cold's generally fine. I'll deal with the cold. I mean, my fingers might stop working after a while, but again, we might try and pre-prep a bit more so if it's going to be that sort of weather. But yeah, rain will just get shelter, but wind is the tough one.
That's the tricky one.
Yeah. Let's get this stove anyway.
No, go for it.
Let's get this pan heated. I'm just going to just dry fry these little flatbreads.
Great stuff. So obviously we're kind of using our imaginations here. We're picturing Harrison on top of some kind of a rugged mountain somewhere. Have you got some favourite fells that you like to cook on in the lakes?
Yeah, there's definitely favourites. I mean, it's always a tough question when people sort of say, what's your favourite mountain as such?
Yeah.
I find there's always different stories behind them, whether or not it's who you were with at the time or the conditions you had, or
Absolutely.
maybe the key moments of how you've been up those. But certainly one with a nice view is always best for me, I think, if you're going to spend the time to be cooking and taking it in. Classics such as, I guess, Fleetwood Pike, Helvellyn and whatnot, and even some closer to home ones. I mean, I'm lucky to sort of look onto Wansfell from my bedroom window sort of thing.
Wow.
So I've got a bit of a soft spot for that too. Can fly up there for a little sunset on an evening after work sort of thing. So yeah, it's always little special locations.
Ah, and I suppose that can only add to a delicious meal as well.
The secret ingredient, yes, I think is the outdoors, definitely. And then maybe a bit of extra protein flies in every now and again.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, looking at the setup that we've got here, is this kind of a fairly usual setup that you'd have this much stuff with you? Because I can't imagine it's light.
No, I'm not known for lightweight packing or anything really. I get a lot of questions of people asking how heavy my pack is and whatnot, and it's always the answer generally is if it goes on my back, it'll go up the fell. But yeah, I mean, this is sort of, it depends what I'm doing. Sometimes I'll go up just for a cook. I'll go up again, watch a sunset just up there, just have my dinner, sort of dinner al fresco, I guess, in the backyard, but it's the lakes. Sometimes it could be a hike and cooking whilst you're on there, or even sometimes it could be wild camping or even a multi-day. So the packs can obviously increase in size if there's multiple people. Yeah, it can be quite a heavy pack at times, but yeah, you can always cut things down though. I think little bits of pre-prep here and there. I think you can take a little bit less bits of equipment. Or even plan the recipes accordingly to try and cut that down more so.
Sure.
If you're going to be a few days or whatnot, or want to be
Not
faster and lighter.
So, I mean, it sounds like you're pretty invincible in terms of the weather and the heavy pack, and it doesn't seem to faze you. But the Harrison we see before us today hasn't always necessarily been the kind of hill-going, healthy specimen that I'm chatting to here.
Oh, that's
and
very kind.
What's fantastic is that you're so incredibly open about sharing your story with us, and yeah, it's incredibly inspiring. And so maybe while we hear this next bit, you can tell us a little bit of background to how you ended up finding the fell foodie inside yourself.
Is that them people song? Yeah, I think it's very different from the life I used to lead, really. Though I'm from the area, sort of North Carlisle originally, it wasn't something I ever really did, sort of walking, hiking, taking it in. Took it for granted being sort of such a nice area, really. But yeah, I mean, I suppose growing up, I lived quite an active style growing up as a child, but I found myself when I hit sort of puberty, I suppose, in the teenage years, really getting overhit by a really overwhelming sense of self-loathing, really, and just sort of hatred and insecurity for myself and bits. And it was something I very much hid. I didn't reveal it to anybody, not close friends, even family. Just battled through it, but it was something that definitely took its toll further and further as I sort of developed through adolescence. And at its worst, I mean, it was to the point where I didn't really want to exist anymore. I didn't want to be here. Wow. You know, I did contemplate sort of suicide at times, that sort of thing. And at sort of the age of 18, I guess, whilst I was in the hospitality trade, I started working more front of house, and really I discovered sort of the world of alcohol at that point, really. Which initially was great. It was a way it almost sort of released my mind a bit. It gave me that sort of sedation. It seemed to stop the thoughts I was maybe having, these sort of self-loathing, derogatory thoughts. But over time, what I thought of as my medicine really quite quickly became my poison. I moved to York afterwards for university. I went across out there, and it really started to escalate by that point. So I was working back in the hospitality trade, and I was drinking every day, really. It was taking control of my life. It was my sole focus. And by sort of the age of 21, really, I was consuming well over 20 pints a day. I'd ballooned to over 22 stone. I was a full-time smoker. Just a really sort of lethargic, unhealthy lifestyle, really. And ultimately, what had became that way to escape my problems had become a problem of itself.
Of course.
In the end.
It's hard to imagine, kind of having followed some of your exploits online and heard about what you've been up to. Yeah, it's a pretty miraculous transformation.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the 21 was probably my biggest low point, really. I think I had a lot of friends come to visit me in York, and I felt quite alone in this city. I was quite a lone drinker. I just sort of every night went out, did my job. I was highly functioning really. I still worked, and I had a lot of friends come to visit for my birthday and whatnot, and it ended up being quite a long occasion in the bars. And at that point, really, after a few days, I really decided that once they were all going back again, that I was just me again, alone with my issues. And I actually decided in the end to call home and decide to say that this was goodbye to my mum, and I was ready to just finish it all there and just escape. I had no real idea of a comeback for myself. But thankfully I didn't do it at that time. But things carried on for another 4 years or so until June 2016.
Yeah.
When I'd somehow during this point found myself a girlfriend, but I was living two lives with the alcohol, I guess, and that sort of side, the two relationships. And I was unfaithful in the end due to being under the influence.
Okay.
And the relationship ended, and I decided to just completely leave that city behind and vow to really change what I'd become. I'd become someone I didn't want it to be.
Yeah.
So I just up and left this city I'd spent 7 years in. Decided to quit alcohol there and then. I moved back to the Lake District and turn this chapter to try and change things around.
And so, did you was it family, or did you kind of naturally, just being in Carlisle, just kind of think, oh, well, the hills are just there, or what was that driver to kind of going from, like you say, that kind of poor health that you were in at the time to then setting up the first fell?
I think initially, I mean, it was out of love for this ex-partner, I guess, at first. I really wanted to try and win her back on that extent, and I vowed to remove alcohol from my life. And I had some really close friends that came together. I was very open with my struggles from that moment, just on my personal sort of Facebook and whatnot. Said exactly why I'd come back from York, why I'd come back to Cumbria. And the outpouring of support I got was really overwhelming at the time, really. People turned up on my doorstep. And a close friend of mine, Ryan, actually appeared that week and said, I'm going to take you for a walk. Okay. And I didn't really know what to expect at the first. I think I didn't really have any equipment or clothes to hand, so I just put on what I had. It was like an old jumper, and I think I had some Lonsdale trainers on at the time. I was off to go, and he went, we're going up Helvellyn, which meant absolutely nothing to me at the time. I just presumed it was maybe the name of a craft beer or something, really. And yeah, so it sort of began there. So he drove me into the lakes. I didn't have a pair of boots to me at all, so he stopped up on the way to a local store that way and picked up a pair of boots for me and bought them. And I was completely penniless at the time, and obviously I spent all the money I had on drink and paying my previous debts from moving out of York. Yeah. And he bought these pair of boots for me and took me off to the start of walking up Helvellyn, yeah. So almost like he knew he was investing in the right thing for you. It was a real show of faith, really, and a show of friendship, I guess, and in what was such a huge moment of change in my life. It was a big show of endorsement. But I was so unfit at the time, of course, and I was going under the withdrawal of alcohol. I stopped smoking. Again, I was still very heavy, overweight. So heading up these fells initially, it felt like almost my Everest, I guess, walking up and struggling up. But I remember it was such a glorious day, heading up Helvellyn that time. And so despite kind of how tired you were feeling, you were still able to appreciate the fact that it was a pretty special landscape, yeah. Yeah, and I think just the determination of it all as well. I mean, I was ready to leave that behind, and I really wanted to become this new person and remove that sort of stranger from my life. But slowly, sort of one after another, we finally reached the summit of Helvellyn. I remember just looking across down to Striding Edge, and it really just sort of clicked something in me, and it was a bit like a new passion had been ignited, and almost a new addiction was being formed, and that really just snowballed from there and carried on to sort of trying to do more and more fells in the lakes and enjoying this love of hiking. So that kind of addiction that you were talking about then, kind of finding that the mountains was something that was really starting to appeal to you and you wanted to do more and more, I think that's something that people watching this can probably really identify with, that kind of sense of what's next. So at what point did you kind of feel like you were kind of a competent fell walker, that you had you were holding your own in that environment? I guess I just sort of went step by step. I mean, I didn't really. I suppose I was exposed to some quite large ones straight away. I mean, my first three were sort of Blencathra, Helvellyn, and Scarfer Pike, and then go big. Snowdon was straight afterwards. So it was kind of straight into the deep end, really. So I remember we went to do Snowdon down in Snowdonia, and we did via Creep Goch and stuff. I remember seeing the sign there saying experienced walkers only, and looking at each other thinking, are we experienced walkers? What denotes that? I'll go if you go. But yeah, so we did it, and it was fantastic. It's still one of my favourite sort of routes now. But it's it was one of those where I guess the challenge was already quite great in my personal life, that heading up these mountains just felt a bit like a physical manifestation of that, I guess. You know, the upward journey and the challenge of getting to that summit and reaching, I guess, that equilibrium, which was for my mindset as well.
Oh, wow. So at what point then did you kind of had this love of cooking that you had anyway, kind of fostered all the way from childhood? And then when did you kind of start to bring the two together? Was it kind of camping trips where you're pretty underwhelmed by what was on offer?
Well, it was mainly the walking at first and things really, and the fitness journey, I guess, of trying to just leave that previous life behind. So again, I'd even got into running at one stage when I couldn't even run a bath before. And we gradually went on that way and started walking up these fells much quicker, and then the boots got swapped for trail trainers and we started running up these fells, and then within around 11 months of that turnaround from June 2016, 11 months later we're at the start of a marathon line, so we're off to run a marathon. It was just completely flip reversal of where I'd come from. And from that moment is when I sort of started more the social media side and sort of dubbed myself as this fella foodie. And it was all very anonymous at first, though. It was very much. I was going to say,
did you ever have this vision that it was going to become what it's become?
Not at all, no. And even still now, it's great to have these opportunities to be able to share the story further. And I think that's really an endearing part. And I really appreciate being able to share it to help others, really, that may be still struggling with the likes of alcoholism, depression, mental health, and obesity and things. But it was one of those that was all anonymous at first and was very much just me showcasing the walks I was doing and meals I was cooking at home, I guess, that then turned into more extravagant packed lunches that I'd take into the fells.
Okay.
So I'd often had a lot of comments from people about what I was bringing up there. And one day someone asked about maybe grabbing a stove and cooking it on the mountaintop itself. So I went and bought a stove, and then people really started to sort of take a bit more interest then and sort of started cooking and started to reveal more.
I mean, a hill walk's good, but if someone's going to cater for you on the summit, then I think you'd get buy-in from quite a lot of folk.
I'm often inundated with requests, yes. I've got many friends who I'm not sure if I'm actually there for the friendship or just the fodder.
And I'm sure you must get inundated now with requests of people asking for you to kind of cater for them midway on their walk, or, you know, at that poignant romantic part on a wild camp or what have you. So, I mean, do you oblige, or is it a bit of a tricky line to toe?
It's, yeah, I do. There's many people who want to sort of, I suppose, finish off their walk that way, or maybe, you know, have a romantic meal with the sunset sort of heading up on the mountaintop. But it's something that would be great, and I think it would be fantastic to do. But there's all other avenues towards it, I guess. I mean, I've done the hospitality side before. I'm not really rushing to go back into that, obviously, with what I left behind. And also, I guess, all the legalities of it as well. I guess I'm not a mountain leader, so I haven't got the insurance to take people up there. Even if I met them up there, then there's the health and hygiene aspect, you know, sort of, I can't carry a refrigerator up and stuff, really, and refrigerate all the raw meats and whatnot and foods that way.
Like a Yeti cooler.
Well, there we go. I mean, things go so far, but again, it all depends on how the local councils see that, if they see that as deemed to be okay, and hand wash stations, running water, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, obviously you were saying about the kind of legalities and things like that, but actually, if you're just going to meet them there, unless you're an incredibly terrible businessman, you've got to cater for all of the time it's going to take you to prep and to walk up there and to do it and then to walk back out. And
to travel, and I've still got to wash my own dishes. So it's all that really, but I don't know. And again, for me, it's one of the things I use to escape. It's still something that's very important for my mental health, I think, and physical health, heading up out there just to enjoy something different and taking in these views. And I think turning it onto that sort of business aspect really takes it away a bit more and would deem it something else, really. So.
Yeah, I think that's sometimes the trouble, isn't it? You often hear about people that turn their passions into their hobbies into their work, and it works incredibly, and then others who kind of actually feel like the love is lost somewhat through doing that. So no, I think it's kind of, you know, it's all personal, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, I see it as just somewhere really, again, the social media side and whatnot, and sharing the story as something to really just reveal that nature of my past and really share my passion for food and show that you don't have to be just relying on these sort of freeze-dried, dehydrated meals in the fells all the time. And that they're obviously great for survival or big sort of expeditions and whatnot, but you can have a bit more sustenance out there too and have something to look forward to. I mean, I'm not one to skimp on nice food ever, really. So when I'm out walking, again, I don't really want to be eating something I wouldn't usually eat then. So for me, it's half the experience and just elevates that to another level.
So kind of people watching this and thinking, okay, well, he's making that look very easy. And I kind of, maybe I'll give it a go. And what kind of what would they need? So, I mean, we've got a very fancy looking stove here, definitely bigger than my kind of go-to camping stove. So what could we get away with? What would be our bare essentials?
I mean, I've cooked on anything, sort of done the little tiny, almost tea boilers sort of thing as well. I've cooked on those before out in boffies, even over open fires, in sort of on private locations and whatnot. But I think so long as you've got a source of fire, source of fuel, and a container of sorts, you can do something. So I think even if you just have a little small compact or something that's a concertina goes inside itself, you can knock up a little one-pot dish in that if you're just by yourself. The only reason I go for these more wide-based things, I suppose, is because I'm generally cooking for multiple people or cooking other aspects, so it just makes things all quicker. But there's a lot of things you can do in terms of preparation too. Cutting things a lot smaller, fine dicing things, cutting all the meat down a lot smaller if you're going to cook meat and stuff. It will cook quicker on the hillside and things, exactly. Again, we mentioned the weather before. Obviously, the wind that comes in tends to sap a lot of temperature out of things as well, so things can take longer to cook in the outdoors. But it's all little hints and tricks there, and I will sort of plan my recipes around where we're going, how long we're going to go for, if it's just a cook or it is a camping trip or if it's a multi-day, plan it accordingly. And there's no shame as well in pre-prepping a lot. I mean, I've pre-prepped a lot today. I would usually do it all on the mountaintop. I like to do it all out there, even for making all my little bread doughs and whatnot. I like to really become one, I guess.
I suppose if you're going to take the effort to go up there, you might as well spend a while.
Exactly. Well, I see it as sort of, cooking originally began, I guess that's sort of the ancestral past of it, cooking over fire, isn't it, in the outdoors. And over time it's developed and been sort of, finely tuned by chefs and whatnot in restaurants. We've now got these fantastic repertoire of recipes from all over the world. And I guess it's taking that refinement and taking it almost back to where it came from is what I love. So yeah, doing it all out there again is that sort of homage, I guess. But you could just prep something completely up and just reheat it out there. I mean, there's lots of, again, some of these Yeti coolers and whatnot you can take up as like flasks and whatnot, have it ready to go. Soups, stews, one-pot dishes, you can take them all up there absolutely fine. So. And
I liked when we were having a bit of a chat before, and you were kind of saying, well, barbecue's outdoor cooking. So actually, a lot of people would say, oh, I could never do that. But actually, if you've had a barbecue, you're kind of well on the way there to. You've made that effort to light a fire, to take it outside.
Exactly. So I see it as it's outdoor cooking. There's not many people sort of doing it up on the exposed points in the fells, and probably for good reason, really, I guess, in terms of the weather and carrying it all the way up there.
How many cold dishes do you eat, to be honest?
They're often cold when I'm eating them, if I'm showing them content-wise, definitely. It's but that's half of it for me. I mean, generally, I'll if I'm out with company, they'll get a nice warm meal and stuff, and then I might faff around for a picture from my Instagram, I guess. And it gets a bit cold then, but sometimes it's not about that, is it? It's about the sustenance, about actually the refueling after being a hard day. It doesn't always have to look, as if it's served up sort of restaurant style. It can just be about the flavour and the actual
and especially this time
nutrition.
Of year as well. It's pretty much cold and it's pretty much kind of dark by about 4:30. So I suppose the maybe the garnishes aren't quite that necessary on a winter trip.
I'd say so. Yeah, the satire is not lost on me when I'm up there grating my nutmeg on top of my risotto. I must admit, but it's I think it's I sometimes just like that sort of tongue-in-cheek aspect to it too. About you're doing something, you're cooking up there, you are against the elements. It's tougher.
And your chilli powder's kind of blowing off.
Exactly. Yeah, it has. Yeah, hopefully not into my eyes. That's not happened yet, but it could be an interesting one.
Great. So in terms of this recipe that you've put together here, is this one of your own that you've kind of dreamt up, taken aspects from other people's?
I'd say obviously a classic recipe, ratatouille and whatnot. I mean, this doesn't go too far from the book, but a lot of things I will develop myself a little bit. You'll pick up little bits here and there, what partners together over time, and just experiment with things. So. I do try my own recipes a bit, I guess. I will put some of those out.
And if you do want to find Harrison on social media, you've put up quite a few little kind of tips and tricks and some kind of shorter recipes, maybe that are quite realistic to try and achieve for your first try, perhaps.
Well, there's always shortcuts, as I say. You can start off with the beginner thing. I mean, all these recipes can obviously be done at home as well, so it doesn't have to be in the outdoors. It could be lowland by a lake, it could be in a campsite, it could be up the top. It's completely up to you. But I do share those recipes on there, as well as the whole sort of background to my story as well, and the continued sort of development of that as well, all on my social media channels.
Absolutely. And I think it's such an incredible thing that you feel that you can share your story and that you want to, because the following that you have now is obviously, it's a testament to your openness and your passion for what you do now as well. So I think it probably begs the question, are you wanting to take it any further? Is there kind of a Foodie recipe book in the pipeline or anything like that?
I'd love to. I don't know. I mean, it's one of those that opportunities keep coming up a little bit here and there, and I think they're just fantastic to say yes to, and really, like I have with the rest of the journey, I just sort of allow my journey to take its path now, really. I just sort of trust in that sort of factor. So I'd love to do something like a recipe, whether or not it was published or self-published. Again, I'm still really building that repertoire up, I guess. I mean, we've been in somewhere like the lakes, there's only so many good days I want to head up to get the actual bit finished off, to try it out there. Will it work outside? But I do like a challenge too, so I will try things that perhaps are maybe not done outdoors normally. So like I've done things like risottos, nice sort of salmon fish dishes out there. I did even a burger and homemade chips once in a little buffet over there, sort of cooked it all from scratch out in the way. So I'd love to try and sort of do a pizza or anything like fish and chips up at the top one day. So hopefully, yeah, I'd compile it into a book at some point.
Can I sign up for that one?
I'm always looking for testers. Yeah, no problem at all.
Great
There's
stuff.
always that sort of company in the fells. But we'll see. Who knows what's to come?
Yeah, if a book kind of emerges, then you heard it here first. It's smelling incredible, and I know that that's such a horrible thing to say when we're on camera because you can't quite appreciate that. But
well, I think we're about ready to serve. Yeah,
I was hoping you were going to say that.
That's right. So
great stuff.
We'll get this plated up.
Wow, it almost looks too good to disrupt. Thank you so much for all these efforts. Again, I feel quite guilty that I didn't help, but let's give it a try.
Not at all. Hope you enjoy.
Anytime you want to go on a walk, I'm free.
Okay. I'll keep my calendar free.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Oh, I feel like I could be in... Where's ratatouille from?
Well, France, I'd say, generally, yeah.
Oh.
The Provence.
Flatbread. Wow, now you're going to join me, aren't you? You couldn't possibly leave me on my own.
I'm tucking in, yeah, I've got some here.
So, whilst I'm enjoying this delicious ratatouille, let's have some questions from the crew.
Hi Harrison, thanks very much for the talk, that was brilliant, really interesting. I just wondered whether you foraged when you were out on the hills.
I've not done too much of the foraging, no, other than sort of basic blackberries, wild garlic, maybe a bit of sorrel or bilberries sort of thing really. That's as far as I go. I'd love to sort of team up more with a forager, I think, and cook what they pick up, even the wild game side of things as well. But when it comes to things like wild mushrooms, I think you need an expert completely. There's too much room for error, so it's not something I've experimented with, shall we say.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thanks for an incredible talk. I thought you were so eloquent in describing your hardships, and it's so inspirational to hear that. You mentioned you were predominantly self-taught as a chef, but is there anybody in, say, the outdoor world or even the culinary world who you've always looked up to for inspiration?
Thank you. Not too much in the outdoor side of things, but certainly in the culinary aspects, yes. I mean, there's many. I mean, my favourite probably growing up was always watching Keith Lloyd, to be fair, on Saturday Kitchen, but I guess I'd love to be sort of Keith Lloyd of the outdoors, minus the alcohol, I guess, these days. But someone did once compare me a bit to the Galloping Gourmet as well, but that's a bit before my time, I think. But I think he was a bit theatrical anyway, so we'll see.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
So I think you'll all agree, a really inspiring story, and it's easy to see how passionate you are about this, and I'm enthused too. I want to get out there with my stove and try something a bit more adventurous. But yeah, thank you again for being so open and honest, and for turning our Yeti Everyday Adventure stage into this gourmet kitchen.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.